Hey there, welcome to Synth Seeker. My name's Luke. So, what are we doing tonight? I have been playing all evening. Here, let's play with the. There we go. We'll get a little bit more in there so we can see the waving hand. Although it's nice and distorted because of the wide-angle lens, so it looks like I have a giant arm. Anyway, I've been playing. And I've been making a mess and answering comments and things like that. And some people were asking about the modular setup. I was changing it around again, and it's going to continue to change for days and days and weeks and things like that. I am going to do modular jams for January, but I wanted to do a quick video and answer two sort of questions and then show you what you can do with a relatively small system, granted a fancy sequencer, but I've basically only got one oscillator in there that I'm using, and I'm using the Matriarch to do a bass line. And I guess I wanted to cover three things. Someone asked about the patch bay and how the modular feeds into this, and I'll cover that in a second. And then I wanted to talk about bass melodies. Okay, if you watch the Berlin School an uncomplicated approach video, I talk about melodies being, you can have melodies, high melodies that we normally think of when we say melodies, but also bass melodies, like your bass lines can be a melody. And so what I've got here is a sort of Berlin School inspired setup. I've got a single oscillator playing a sequence, so one voice here, not two. So the bed's relatively simple, and I've got a bass line that I'm going to play a melody under everything, and I just want to demonstrate that for you guys. And I also wanted to talk about this thing over here, this little beast here. That is that's a Missing Link 2 or an ML2 from a company called Circuit Happy, and this is not a sponsored video, yada yada, etc. I paid for that out of my own pocket, didn't get a deal on it. I paid full price, but I know the guy who makes this thing because he lives about a mile from where my son lives over in Somerville. Circuit Happy, and this is a clocking tool that connects to Wi-Fi, which is that right here. And once it's on the Wi-Fi network, it provides access to an Ableton Link. I can't see it running right now. Yeah, one link here, right? Oh, actually, we'll zoom in on that. Provides access to an Ableton Link link network, which is a synchronization network. If you don't know what Ableton Link is, it is a way for devices, not just Ableton, it could be anything, iOS apps, hardware devices like this, to synchronize their clocks and their downbeats. That's important, the clock and the downbeat across the network, and there's no latency problems. It's basically, it gets around the latency by basically sharing a clock across the network, and then everything adjusts their latency to compensate, and it just works. I don't know the magic. I'm a software engineer, and I didn't bother, right? If the technology works, it works. Basically what it does is, it's basically when I use this thing essentially as a master clock, and I've got a clock and a reset coming out of it. And that's coming over to my sequencer. And you can mult it to however many sequencers you want. Almost all sequencers have a clock and a reset input, or a clock and a run input. It'll output run instead of reset. And basically this thing, this tiny little 2 HP device gives me start and stop transport control for the entire system, like the sequencer here. If I was synchronizing with live, which I'm not, don't have any clips or anything running in live, no VSTs or anything, but I am using the effects in live on the modular stuff. I have no effects in the modular, right? I'm just running the voices, the modular and the matriarch, into the interface, feeding into live, And then I'm using effects in Live. So like my delay synchronization and everything like that is in Live using Live's tempo, but Live's tempo is following this thing. And so is the tempo on the Metropolix and the sequencer tempo on the Matriarch. It's like magic. Okay. And he makes a hardware, like a tabletop hardware version of this called the Missing Link Junior. And it's just a little box that's USB powered, but they all connect to, you tell them what Wi-Fi network to connect with. And if you don't have a Wi-Fi hub, it's got one built in. So it will make its own Wi-Fi network that everything else can connect to. These things are really cool. I'm going to put a link in the description. You should check this stuff out. Both the Eurorack thing and the desktop one. Because I've got like over there is my, that's my playing out live DAWless rig. And I use the desktop version of the Missing Link over there to drive the clock and the drum machine and the sequencer for any like of my friends' gear if we jam or anything like that. It's freaking awesome. Anyway, so there's a little plug for Circuit Happy. I like those guys. Hi, Ed. I shouldn't say those guys. I think it's just Ed. But anyway, so this is what's in the modular, basically. We just got a sequencer. This thing is providing a little foldable waveform oscillator. The Maths clone, the Abacus, is modulating that. It's going into this tiny little IntelliGel micro VCF, this old school stuff, then into a little VAC. It's being a little Behringer System 100 clone envelopes driving that. So that's the voice that this sequencer is playing. And then the Matriarch is just doing a bass part, right? Right. And I'll play this myself. The sequencer the ARP will run, and I'll just change notes periodically. But let's see. Let's turn that on. All right. So what do I think of the Metropolix? This is a fantastic sequencer. I'm really liking it. It's very playable. And I said this in the video yesterday, but what I've done is I've got a sequence in here across 8 stages with some variation added throughout the sequences. And what's going to happen is as I'm changing parts, like I go from an A part to a B part, I'm going to change how many stages of the 8 stages it's using to generate its notes from. So it's going to start using just 2 stages. And I'm just going to go in and change the number of stages it uses as I go to these parts. And you can change the number of stages. And because it's running its resets off the main clock, I can change the part, which is going to change the sequence. But when we get a new bar, the reset fires and it restarts the sequence in sync with the rest of the system. This is a fantastic sequencer. I'm really, really happy with it. Anyway, it's easier to demonstrate. So, so questions about the modular stuff. So what am I doing with the modular? I don't have any mixers in here. And what I do is I just run the voices directly out of the modular into this patch bay. This is a Samson patch bay, right? 48-point patch bay. You get these on Sweetwater or wherever. They're dirt cheap. And they're nice. They're well built. They're solid. So my voice is running in here. I've got the Matriarch running in the back here. Okay. The bottom row of this patch bay is all of the inputs that are going to the computer. Okay. And what happens is as I add more voices to the modular, I will just jack in, fill up more and more of these inputs with voices as I go. And I've got room basically for 24 voices, which is more than I'll ever need. He says right now, but right now I need 1, 2, 3, right? Matriarch runs in stereo, so there's 2 there. And then one little voice for this oscillator is running into here. And this patch bay is patched into this Motu 24 AI. This thing, the only reason it exists is to provide 24 analog inputs. So in the back of this thing, on this interface, there's 1, 2, 3 dB DB25 connectors. And these connectors come out of here and they terminate in 8 of these balanced cable snakes. So there's 8 balanced cables for each one of these things. and I've got 3 of them, so that's 24 channels. And then this thing's connected to the interface over there, which is connected to the computer. I'm not going to get too much into that, but someone asked, how was I using the patch bay? The patch bay is connected to this 24 AI, and that's connected to the computer. So my synths plug, the modular plugs directly into the patch bay, which plugs directly into this. And this thing has enough headroom that it doesn't care that it's getting signals at a modular voltage. It's plenty fine. Doesn't matter at all. And that's basically how this is being used. So, the person who asked in the comments, and I'm sorry, I can't remember what your nick was, but that's what the patch bay is for. It's basically a front end plug port for the 24 AI. Okay. And these are affordable because these are old. This thing's like, I think these came out 8 years ago. This is not new technology. You can find these used for like $600. So 24 channels for $600, right? Anyway, so let's make some noise here, shall we? So the way this thing works is the clock in Ableton's running. It's doing its thing. And there is no master slave. There's no leader follower. Everything's equal. So if I change the tempo there, it'll change here. If I change the tempo here, it'll change over there. It all stays in sync. But this, I'll start it up, and we've got our sequence run. All right. So there's our sequence running, and it's using 2 stages. These 2 lights are lighting up. I've tuned these to notes and added some additional variation through a thing called accumulators. I'm not going to worry about that right now. But I can dial and change the number of stages. Let's change it to 4. Right, now it's using all 4 of these stages. I can set it down to 3. Right, so there's your Berlin School bed. These are 8th notes that are playing. I've got a dotted 8th delay on it, so this is just following the recipe from an uncomplicated approach. Right, and I can dial up as many as 8 stages. You'll see it's going to use all these stages. And every variation there gives me a new pattern. So I'll turn this back down to 2. All right. And let's play. And this thing tells me 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So I can use this to follow my 4-bar patterns if I'm working in. So that's been running. Say that sequence has been playing. We change it. I've got the hold on the arpeggiator, so it's running, and I can just tap a note and it'll hold it. And then this. Up our pattern, our number of stages being used to 4. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about was bass melodies, right? So this pattern is playing in the key of C minor. Right, let's simplify it a little bit. And I'm choosing the notes from C minor here, which is C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C. So I'm playing a melody basically with this bass. And the root, not the root, but the note of this bass is forcing your perception of the chords, the notes being played here, to form new chords. Right? There's there's a term for this called bass reharmonization. Adam Neely has a video on it. You can go watch it. But I use this technique a lot, and it's really core for a lot of Berlin school, because they'll be having, in the old days, they'll have these patterns running. They won't get a lot of, they won't have so many options for variation, right? So they've got sort of a static pattern running that they do go over and tweak from time to time. But then they change just the pitch of what's playing on the bass, right? And it changes the chord completely. We're in sort of this major place, and we'll go back to C minor. So there's an example where you could use your bass melody to reharmonize the pattern you've got playing. Because I'm not changing any of the pitches in here. This pattern's been pretty pre-programmed as far as the pitches. The pitches are static. The pattern it's using to trigger those pitches is what the sequencer's letting me change by changing the active stage numbers. It. And when we want to stop, we just tell this we want to stop at the end of the bar, and when it finishes the 4-bar pattern, it stops. Right? Not always graceful. The sequence wasn't ready for it, but anyway, so that's what's going on. I'm learning the Metropolix. It's going to be weeks before I understand how that thing works completely, but you can do a lot with a single voice, right? And some delay and reverb that's coming from Ableton. It's coming in through a Motu interface here. You can use a patch bay for that. You don't need a giant, interface like this. Like you can just pick up like a Motu M6, which is a couple $100, I think, or anything. Focusrite. A bunch of my friends are moving into RME territory, which is really pricey. It's out of my wallet can't handle that. And I'm just using the Matriarch's arpeggiator to play a bass line, and then playing melodies on this that reharmonize or force your perception of what the chord being played by the Berlin School bed to be perceived as. And you can go from something that's dark and minor by changing the bass line, you can force it into a B part, like a happier place, and then you can return back down to that dark part. I guess that's it. I just wanted to share that with you guys. I hope that was useful or at least entertaining. And as always, thanks for your time. You've been watching Synth Seeker. Have a good one.